quick reminder before we get started. If you haven't subscribed or followed this podcast on your favorite podcast platform yet, I would really appreciate it if you click the follow button now or the subscribe button, as it will really help us a lot. So in this episode of Recovery Snippets, I speak with Danielle, who's a dietitian that supports people struggling with binge eating and diabetes, or essentially the relationship with food. But the thing is, how can we manage our diabetes and our blood sugar levels without jumping onto restrictive diets or 800-calorie diets, which we're told to do? So let's listen to what Danielle has to say. I think the next thing I'd like to ask you, Danielle, is, okay, maybe I might feel like I want to start reintroducing food, but I'm really worried that my blood sugars are going to skyrocket if I give myself permission to eat regular meals, including the foods I crave every now and then. So what do you say to people who are in that transition period?
Yeah, so I definitely try to talk with people about bringing in curiosity with blood sugars. So if somebody says something like that to me, I always respond with, your blood sugar could spike. It may not, though. And if we don't give this an opportunity just to be curious about what's going to happen, you won't know. And usually I try to be very gentle in this because I understand it's hard. And for some people, we'll come up with different ideas. I talk with them let's make sure that you're eating consistently throughout the day, because even that is going to help with that stability. Do you want to try to add in a protein or fat source with this, fibers? Just see how it goes. Basically, just let yourself experiment and be okay with what that blood sugar response might be, because it could be different the next time. There could be something you could add to it. So almost in a way, its own exposure, you're just giving little exposures until the person feels comfortable and feels safe to have those foods around.
Yeah, okay. And the thing I'd like to ask also is, because you mentioned very briefly on food pairing, for those who are not familiar with it, what is food pairing and how can it help your blood sugars? Adding more food? How is that going to help my blood sugars?
Yeah. What?
Yeah.
That seems interesting. So when we are creating a meal, typically if someone's thinking okay, I'm going to have for example, some oatmeal. That can be big, scary feelings for people with diabetes. But what happens is when you throw in maybe a protein and fat source, let's say you're throwing in some peanut butter, it's got some protein, has some fat, maybe throw in some fiber, some berries. So the protein and fat slows down the breakdown of the carbohydrate, which would be the oats. So as the carbs are breaking down, which again, that's what they're meant to do. They are meant to give us that energy. They're our brain's primary fuel source. You throw in the protein and fat, it's going to slow it down. So now when your blood sugar is increasing, it's going to have a slower curve up, and it's going to help you have more stable energy. So I talk about this all the time with people. How can you balance your plate, and, what are the benefits of that? So pasta, have your bowl of pasta. Do you want to throw chicken in? Do you want to throw in some broccoli? Do you want to have some cheese? I feel like these are ways of making the food, one, more enjoyable, but two, definitely a good source of that slower breakdown for the carbs. So that's what food pairing is. And you can do it with snacks and meals. And I think it's just a really great tool for people, especially when you're trying to work on healing your relationship with food.
It's actually hitting, well, I don't like to say this term, hitting two birds with one stone. You're introducing possibly your fear foods, and then you're also improving your blood sugars. So it's a really good motivator, actually.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely helpful to know, because I think, again, thinking about food pairing and then thinking about, the previous question you had asked, if someone's scared to see how a food's going to impact them, it's again, this is a really great tool. It's not the only way, but it's a tool that can be helpful.
Yeah. And I also like to pick your brains also on this, Danielle. What have you heard of like for diabetes? Sometimes doctors would recommend very low calorie diets, like roughly 800, maybe 1,000 calories a day.
Yeah, it's not good. That's not good. That's not good.
Tell me more.
Uh, yeah, I feel, so I've read some different research on the different diets for diabetes. I mean, low calorie means low energy. And if you're not getting enough food for your body to sustain you, you're not going to be functioning well. And also that could impact your blood sugars. So thinking about, just in general, 800 calories or 1,000 calories, like that's barely in the needs of a toddler. So when you're telling somebody to go on a diet like that, I presume the reason is with diabetes for weight loss. Okay, maybe you'll see an improvement in the A1C at first. Maybe you'll see, some weight loss. But what ends up happening after that is they've weight cycled because they're probably going to, as they start eating normally again, their body's going to try to adapt, and they might see that yo-yo dieting pattern, which can increase insulin resistance. So now the person not only has, regained weight, but now their body is having a harder time with that insulin, getting into the cells. So I think dieting is probably one of the worst things people with diabetes can do, yet it's one of the only things we're told to do.
That's really interesting. I didn't know it would affect your insulin resistance.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll send you after. There's a really, really interesting article about that and some studies on it. So I'll send that to you after.
Yes, please. And probably I can like link that in the description of this podcast
Sure.
also.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, wow. So like yo-yo dieting does much, much more quote unquote damage, shall I say, with very strong quote unquote science, because I don't want to use like fear words, but like things like affecting your thyroid health, affecting your blood pressure, cholesterol, yo-yo dieting. Really, yeah.
Yep. So, I mean, it is essentially putting stress on your body. I think a lot of times people don't realize that. Like you think about like wellness culture and how people, it's like glamorized to eat less. And the problem is that these things are not sustainable and it's not nourishing our bodies properly. So for somebody with diabetes, not getting enough food, we need consistent eating to happen in order for our blood sugars to stay stable. I mean, even for people without diabetes, because when you think about glucose, blood sugar, that's what gives you the energy. And so if you're not getting that, you're not going to be able to concentrate. You're probably going to have this like preoccupation with food, thinking about it. It kind of messes with like your hunger signals because your body's adapting to not having enough. So I would definitely say, like with any other condition and just with people in general, dieting is not beneficial for people with diabetes. And especially if you're in the mode for trying to like lower your blood sugars.